Out of 77 regions in Cook, I cover like 66 of the areas, professional volunteer.
Let me just talk about the one who made everybody stand today. She is really, really kind. She is a true champion for the Chicago Housing Authority and literally serves tens of thousands of residents in Chicago. So I think we ought to give her a hand. Thank you, Francine, for seriously.
How do you follow that? Maurice Kirkendall for True Love Center and Bright Star. We're in the Roseland area and the Bronzeville area.
Taran Williams and part of the Bright Star Community Outreach team and Greater Bronzeville area.
Good morning, my name is Claudice Ware. I work for Francine Washington, and I also serve on the board at Oakwood Shores.
Good morning, everyone. Joel Hammerneck. After 20 years at Sunshine Gospel down in Woodlawn, I have recently gone over to the University of Chicago. Forgive me.
Morning, I'm Deanna Perez. I'm the director for the Behavioral Health Department here at Bright Star Community Outreach, serving the Greater Bronzeville area.
I'm Nathaniel Stewart. I'm just a lay representative of Hyde Park Church. They serve the university community both in East Hyde Park and in East Woodlawn.
Roosevelt Walker, New Memorial Missionary Baptist Church, Greater Grand Crossing Community.
Harry Washington Jr., Bright Star, Greater Bronzeville.
Good morning, Jada Wilson Turnbow, Director of Education for Bright Star Community Outreach.
Age, I'm going to sit. I'm CJ Jones, BSCO, and Bright Star Church, Greater Bronzeville area.
Hi, I'm Demetra Clay. I'm the grant manager here at Bright Star Community Outreach, and I'm also a member of Bright Star Church.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Veronica Johnson. I'm the co-pastor of Hyde Park Union Church, also chairperson of the Interfaith Council Anti-Violence Task Force of Hyde Park and Kenwood.
Joni Vaughn, Bright Star Church, and St. James Church, serving the Greater Bronzeville area.
I'm Beth Cherner. I'm a consultant here at Bright Star Community Organization.
John Vaughn, Executive Pastor at Bright Star and St. James. And I brought the car for Pastor Harris that Rabbi Siegel drives and Pastor Barlow washes. And I do whatever Pastor says. All right.
Introduce yourself. Okay. My name is Benjamin, pastor of St. John Baptist Temple, 9319-29 South Cottage Grove Avenue in the Burnside community. Also, we have just established a couple of years ago the St. John Temple Community Development Corporation, so we can do work in the community or what have you.
Zebediah White, Senior Pastor of New Eclipse Church, New City Community.
I believe we covered everybody. Last.
I'm Elijah Kendrick. I'm Pastor Harris' executive pastor.
So would you clap for all these great faith leaders and community leaders that are in the room today, and thank you for coming today. And so I'm really, really proud, and some others will come in and we will make sure we acknowledge them. We realize also that folks are getting their children to school, but we wanted to respect your time as well as respect. I'm really, really proud to introduce to you all for the first time to our specific network. Come on, clap your hands for Deputy Mayor Gatewood. How you doing, sir?
Doing well, brother. I appreciate the warm welcome. You know, I always love coming out here for breakfast. It feels like a second home. But really excited to hear from you all today. And talk more around how we can work together. I'm a big believer in collaboration. I know we don't get to the safety we want to see in the city by working in silos or working alone. You will see me in places, a lot of places all the time, and I really want to listen and really think about how we can help make our city safer. So really excited about it. We've been on this job now since June 1st, right, Manny? June 1. But you know, even on the calendar it says, what's that, 2.5 months? That is not what it feels like. But in a good way. We get to learn different things every single day. We get to listen to new experts every single day, and we think about opportunities to help people. I come to this work particularly because I wake up every day thinking about how we can help more people. And that's been my drive ever since I got into this work. So I'm excited to, one, tell you all a little bit about some of the things that we're doing, and then honestly hearing from you all about the work you're doing, the concerns you have, and how we can partner. Because I'm a firm believer in partnership. You know, this is a new office. The Office of Community Safety was created when Mayor Johnson took office. I think this was the first executive order he signed, or the second, but he signed 4 all at the same time. And I'll tell you, he doesn't know this. When he was passing out pens, I thought I would get the pen for the executive order for the job that I'm in, but I did not get that pen. Nonetheless, really excited about the approach that we're taking with our work, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. So historically, when it was the Office of Public Safety, it was not through the fault of those deputy mayors. I firmly believe that. It was structured to be reactionary. We can't be reactionary. So I've bifurcated the approach to our office, where we have one portion of our office that focuses on the daily operations of city offices and how you build in that rapid response, and you can be reactionary. And I've built out an entirely separate team that focuses on the root causes of violence and how we address those long term. So we look at 3 key populations. We call them youth of highest promise as opposed to youth of highest risk. We call them adults of highest promise as opposed to adults of highest risk, and also survivors of violence and crime. And really thinking about how we lead our work in education, healthcare, housing, policing, community violence intervention, community environment. What's the one I'm missing? Oh, economic upward mobility. So really looking at how we take each of those key areas and pull experts from around the city and work in 3 phases. So we're starting some of this work up now. Excited to see where it goes, because at the same time, we're building out our rapid response work, because obviously the things that we see in the city need a response now, right? And you have to have time to build into the work you're doing. So again, this is why we're building out a structure across all of our city agencies, having them understand the role that each of us play in safety, understanding that safety, the solutions to safety don't lie only in CPD. They don't lie only in the mayor's office. They lie in all of us. So really thinking about how we collaborate on a deeper level, thinking about how we bring in more community partners to the work. I'm sure you all have heard the mayor say the 5th floor is open, and we mean that. Throughout a week, I may have 300 people come through my office, either on the work that we're working on, meetings, and partnerships. And this has been almost every week since we took over. And we started that with a staff of 2. Now we're at a staff of 8. And we were able to kind of staff up and pull in some rock stars, because we know this work is important and we know we can't do it alone. The overall office is still staffing up throughout the mayor's office, but we are trying to be very intentional about the people we bring on to help us move the work forward. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I think a couple of things that stick out to me. First of all, I love the nomenclature. I love how you didn't say at risk, right? So could you just go over those 3 just one more time? Because a lot of times the power of the labels, right? And what it does and why you're thinking about that in a different way.
Yeah, and let me, so I said youth of highest promise, adults of highest promise, and survivors of violence and crime, survivors and victims of crime. Now, when we talk about language, it's very important, because I do want to give credit to a really, really good friend, Orlando Chile Mayorga, who works in the Lieutenant Governor's office. He is the reentry coordinator for the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative. He has done a ton of work in restorative justice and healing throughout the state, from his time when he was incarcerated, from the time that he's been out. He led that work with Precious Blood Ministries. He's leading that work for the Lieutenant Governor. And we were sitting in one of these groups, and he said, well, you know, language matters, because we went through an entire process when I was the director of the Illinois Justice Project prior to this, having the Illinois Department of Corrections change language on their website, right, from offender, and we had them change that language to be more welcoming to the folks who are in DOC and the folks who are coming home. So really language always matters. So if we constantly tell young folks they're at the highest risk, or adults that they're at the highest risk, they'll start believing that they're at the highest risk. So that language matters, and how we invest in young folks and the adults and the survivors matters.
I think that's amazing. So a lot of times people, especially faith and community leaders like everybody that's in this room today, and some of the folks that are watching on the screen who couldn't be here today, you know, people get to know what we do, but they don't really get an opportunity to know who we are. So for many folks in this room, it's their first time experiencing you. I am blessed to have met our deputy mayor. We met as classmates in the greatest class of leadership, Greater Chicago, the class of 2022. Other folks would be going crazy for saying something like that, but really got a chance to hear his passion and learn not only from your experience, but also why this work matters to you. So if people are learning and getting to know Deputy Mayor Gary Gatewood for the first time, who is Gary Gatewood?
First and foremost, I'm a father, right? And I think that's important, because one of the things I did prior to taking this job was sit down with my kids, because I knew this job would take a lot. It would take a lot, because it would be a big commitment. But the conversation I had with my children, 3 of them, and for all of you out here who have 3 kids, you know, them kids wear you out. If you have more than 3 kids, God bless you. I'll continue to pray for you on a regular basis. But really having a conversation with my kids about what it would take to do this job, and if we had an opportunity to use our skill sets to help other kids in the city and help other people in the city, we should do it. Originally born here in Chicago, grew up in Jackson, Mississippi. It's been great. I've been back in the city for 7 years now. After law school, I went and ran a reentry project in Cincinnati, Ohio, that focused on youth who were both in the child welfare system and the juvenile justice system. Came here and I ran a policy shop as the policy director for the Juvenile Justice Initiative. So worked a lot on youth and reforms for youth in the juvenile legal system. And then I went over to the Illinois Justice Project. I was the director of the Illinois Justice Project for 2 years, followed up my predecessor, who's now the Cook County Public Defender, Sharon Mitchell Jr. And I was there 4 total years, had the opportunity to come and work for Mayor Brandon Johnson. I couldn't turn it down because I'm of the firm belief that this administration can help with the partnership of community, and we really mean that, change the trajectory of the city. And it's not just for my kids, right? And my kids are 10, 7, and 4, and I'll tell you how far ahead I'm looking. It's also changing the trajectory for my grandkids, right? And again, we have to think about the pathways that we set out long term, while also addressing the issues that we see here in real time. My job description says I'm supposed to eradicate the root causes of violence, right? I know, right? I know. Yeah, right. You know, the day is young. I may have that done before lunch. But really, one of the things that's, you know, interesting about that is I remember having a conversation with a mentor of mine, Paula Wolf, when I worked at ILJP, about, you know, you would always hear folks say, we should be eradicating the root causes, right? And you would never hear people say how they would actually do it. And then I look at my job description and it says, all right, well, you've been saying that. Well, tell us how you can do it. So now it is really an interesting time in understanding that now there's an opportunity for the deepest collaboration that the city's seen, hopefully. You know, one thing that I genuinely believe in is collaboration. I had the opportunity to work on the Pretrial Fairness Act and the Safety Act overall, and we put together over 100 organizations throughout the state to work on one cause, right? And what that showed me was once we decide there's an area that we want to address, there's not a single reason we can't do it. And that's the approach our administration has taken, and we're excited about that.
So it's a new administration. Let's just be frank. As any other new administration, you're kind of in the audition spot. You get the spot, and let's be honest, the honeymoon is over. right?
There was a honeymoon?
Yeah, exactly. right, exactly. A lot of people, they say, listen, y'all, in there now, the speeches are great, but now you got to do the real work. And we're seeing some of the same things that was happening previous to this new administration, and it continues on. But I think a lot of people wonder, who is the team? Who are the people, right? And the media is going to announce what they want to announce, right? Depends on what they want to announce on that particular day. But you get a chance to sit at the table with the team members that the mayor is choosing. How do you feel so far about what this new leader is doing in his approach to bring these new team members to bear? And then how long do you think it'll take for you all to literally go from being players to team members and moving forward?
This is a really good question, PCH. I remember the very first official day, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, had a moment like this in life. I'm sure you all have had, because all of y'all are leaders. We sat in the room for our first cabinet meeting, and you could feel how special this is. You could see from the folks who are around the room. Obviously, you have the mayor. You have Rich Gaitis, who's been running the city through OEMC for 30 years. You have Tina Passiani-Zayas, who was a state senator, but knew she would leave her state senator post to come and be the first deputy chief of staff because she knew what we could do in the city. John Robertson, the COO, government veteran through and through. He came back over from Cook County after working for the city. He's been in government throughout. You have Yumi Grigsby, who is a brilliant woman who's leading our policy team. You have Jen Johnson, former chief of staff for CTU, who is over. You think I've got, and then we were sitting, you said I have a tough job. Jen Johnson oversees health, education, and youth. All right, so she has DFSS, she has parks, she has CPS, she has so much in her portfolio. She has CDPH. You have Kenyon Merritt, who, earlier when Pastor Harris said Leadership Greater Chicago 22 is the greatest class of all time, that was not hyperbole. Kenyon Merritt, who is was also in our class, is our Deputy Mayor of Business and Economic Development, Business, Economic and Neighborhood Development. Let me be clear on that. We have Beatrice Ponce de Leon, who just joined the team to lead our efforts for migrants and new Americans and immigrant refugee rights. So the team continues to grow. We continue to build. Jason Lee, the mayor's senior policy advisor, we've been able to put together a really strong team of folks internally. We know that there are positions that we'll still work to continue to fill, and we know that we're already a team. We came in as a team from day one, because when I said there was no honeymoon phase, it was very important for us to understand here are the approaches that we can take to change the trajectory, and this is why we need to take them now. And being able to do that in partnership and being able to do that in collaboration from day one. Everybody who comes to the table to work, and this is why we keep our doors open, because again, we've understood from the very beginning the things that we inherited as a city didn't start last night. They won't end tomorrow, but if we work together in collaboration, we can change the trajectory of the city.
I love that. And so in just a moment, we're going to open the floor for folks to share their concerns and ask questions and hear from you. And, let's just, for one more question, let me push the envelope and raise the hood so we can see underneath there. Historically, I tend to think and feel if the stars were aligned federally, state, county, city, and then in the communities, things would happen much faster, right? You got those hoops we have to go through, the bureaucracy, and there's a tremendous amount of division. My question to you is, do you feel that there is some sort of new alignment that's happening from the city level all the way to the federal, and all those relationships being built? And do you think that it would help us to move us faster and forward?
So not only are those relationships being built, you have a level of synergy that we've all dreamed of, right? You have synergy from the mayor through the Cook County Board President, through the governor. We were just in Humboldt Park a few weeks ago with Leader Jeffries, and Delia Ramirez and Jesse Fuentes and myself and the mayor and others having a conversation around the work that can happen in Puerto Rican Town and Humboldt Park, right? So not only that, right, not only are you getting to a place where you have more collaboration across government, because we also have an intergovernmental partnership where we work together with the state through ICJA, the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, DHS, the Department of Human Services, our office, CDPH, and also Cook County, from the Justice Advisory Council to the Office of the President, working together to think about how we address violence and how we pull our resources to address violence through violence intervention and interruption. I will also say, even in the structure of some of the work that we're doing, having philanthropy at the table for every one of these conversations, and not just from a resource perspective, not just from a financial resource perspective, but understanding that they fund so many of the CBOs that we work with. So you need collaboration, and you need folks at the table to better understand where are the gaps that we are missing and how do we do this in collaboration. And also having the business community at the table to put skin in the game, right? Having them as partners at the table has been very good, and really making sure we have all of those players, finding out how we set the container and what we can work on, and understanding that while this is there are needs that we see now, that this is a marathon, and understanding that on August 22nd, we will be 7% into our administration. We'll be at 100 days on August 22nd. What is that? Is today August 22nd? Look at us, 7% in, 100 days. What do you know? So 7% into our administration. And I will tell you the work that's been done so far, setting up community safety cabinets where you have that level of collaboration, bringing together 9 working groups that focuses on the root causes of violence. We are dealing with 13,000 people, new migrants, 13,000. So resettling folks, setting up shelters, and we're busting at the seams in that, but we continue to work. And we have to also be able to tell that story of the work that's going on, because typically people are like, okay, that's fine, but what are you doing for me today? I was in a conversation the other day. We were talking about violence and safety, and one of the gentlemen said, what are you doing right now? And I said, well, right now I'm talking to you with police. Like, I'm literally, right now, this is what you see me doing. But I welcome partnership, right? Because again, I'm under no illusion that Gary and Gatewood or Mayor Brandon Johnson or anybody that we've named in our administration is going to eradicate the root causes of violence like that.
Well, now hold on. Yeah. That couldn't be true, because we got a black mayor.
Yeah, we do.
Now we got a black deputy mayor of community safety. We just got a new African American superintendent who took over after the outgoing black superintendent.
Oh, yeah.
Shouldn't y'all have this fixed by now?
Yeah, hilarious.
I'm just
hilarious.
I mean, that's typically what people tend to erroneously think. Just we got these black leaders and y'all can't handle this black issue. The question is it a black issue?
It's a city issue.
Exactly.
It's an issue that impacts everybody who passes through this city. Every single person who passes through the city should care about safety and how we work together. Because again, the reason I continue to say safety as opposed to violence is because you can bring numbers down, and if there's one murder, that's violence that we need to solve, right? And this is why you won't hear our administration playing that numbers game on, oh, here's the commitment we're making to bringing these numbers. No, we need to impact people. We need to invest in people, and we need people to be a part of this work. So no, it's not just a black issue. It is a city issue, and this mayor is everybody's mayor.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. So I want to pass it. I'm going to need Elijah, and if you, Taran, can help get the microphones, and we're going to pass it around. But you said it. You're dealing with the root causes. Could you tell us what you do know about some of the root causes that you see? And I'm sure some of the folks in the room will give you some perspective from their perspective. But also, as we start to take questions from the audience, tell us what you don't know. Because what I love about in all of my interactions with you is you are one of the first people to come to the table and say, I want to listen because I don't know everything. So tell us what you do know about the root causes, and then tell us what you don't know and why these conversations are important. And then we're going to open the floor for any questions from the audience.
What I do know is we live in a city that is historically disinvested in communities. We live in areas where I went on a trip with a dear friend. We went to Germany a few years ago to look at their prison system. And I was in a conversation with Quinn Rollins, who most of you may know, but remains a dear friend of mine. And we were talking to a professor, and she said, you know, I came here when the wall came down and there was so much rubble on the ground, and it was jarring. And Quinn looked at her and he said, I can walk around the South Side and see rubble on the ground. I don't need to come to Germany for that. So what I do know is we have purposefully disinvested in communities. And it can be Chicago, it can be Jackson, Mississippi, it can be somewhere, it can be Tulsa, Oklahoma, it can be Eastern Kentucky, it can be Cincinnati. You pick a city and you will see areas that have been purposely disinvested in. So we have to understand, one, how we pull our resources, how we start to think bigger. And we have to stop this piecemeal approach where it is, this is my ideal and this is the only idea that works. This is my approach, and it's the only approach that works. We genuinely have to address these issues together, and we have to address it head on. What I do know is it takes time to address root causes, but there are so many people working on these things in collaboration. So understanding how we pull our resources, not just our financial resources, but our brain power to really start tackling these issues. And I don't know a lot, right? Nobody knows everything. I'm smart enough to ask questions. I'm smart enough to listen and find people who can help out more. And that's the approach. And this is the way we've structured our office. This is the way we structure this work. And this is why we come to conversations all around the city and how we turn these conversations into action. And we turn it into action with you all. So open for a few questions. Let's roll.
Absolutely. So I'm really, really excited to have all of you all in the room. Please, this is your time, and please share whatever concerns or thoughts that you have and questions. And let's hear from the Deputy Mayor.
First of all, thanks for being with us, and thank you for the work you're doing. You talked about the first 100 days.
Let me give him this mic.
You talked about the first 100 days, which is today. What would you consider to be, what does success look like after the first year of this administration? What does success look like the second year of this administration? Certainly you must have, you laid out a grid of how you see success. So what does success look like after the first year? What does success look like after the second year?
It's how we invest in people, right? And I genuinely mean that. So how do we get resources to people who have not had access to resources before? How do we show up for folks in places that they haven't seen us before? I was sitting in a meeting down in Roseland the other day, Saturday, because I love to spend my time at community meetings on the weekends, and that was just great. So I was down there Saturday.
I'm sure your kids love that too.
Yeah. Sometimes they come along, right? So really listening to some of the conversations, and an executive director of a social service agency on the far south side said we have not had access to resources like this before, right? And I've spent a lot of time with them over the years, but also making sure we can actually get access to resources to folks. For me, that's a part of the success, right? Because you have folks who are deeply rooted in each of their communities. How do we make sure we open doors to them? How do we work on this layered approach to government? How do we genuinely become better partners, right? And this is not a jab at any administration prior to us, because I've learned really quickly, government is hard. Government takes a lot of collaboration. But how do we make sure we are readily available for folks, and how do we address needs together? Will we have all the answers? Absolutely not. But how we work together to get those answers with folks is how we'll measure success.
Next question.
Hello again, Reverend Veronica Johnson, Hyde Park Union Church. So language is important, as we've said, and so I'm hearing all of it, and I appreciate all of it. I just want to put two puzzle pieces together. When we say eradicate root causes, and then we acknowledge history, we can't eradicate the history. Mm-hmm. We really need to name it and deal with it and accept it across Chicago. From how the projects were, how poor people were treated while they lived in the projects, to what happened when they were torn down, to the disinvestment in young people and Black people. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just asking for more thought about, when we talk about those things, that we use even clearer and more direct language. That, in my opinion, you can't eradicate what happened, but you really need to name it, let people who it makes them feel uncomfortable to hear those things, hear it and say, yep, that did happen. And people are still suffering from what happened. Young people who didn't ask to be raised in those situations and then didn't have the guidance or the healing, access to the healing from being born and raised in trauma. To really, and I know you all, I hear you and I appreciate all that you're saying, and I'm grateful to hear these things. I just wanted to parse that out a little bit, because in my opinion, you can't eradicate what happens, and America has a problem with naming and accepting what happens. They just want to move past it, and we can't move past it and try to solve it at the same time.
I agree wholeheartedly. We can't move past it without acknowledging the purposeful disinvestment, the daily trauma that it is to wake up in some of our communities, the daily trauma that it is to have some of the interactions that we've had. So we do need to address those head on, right? This is something that the mayor knows and the mayor's talked about, and this is a big approach to our work, right? And eradicating obviously doesn't happen over 4 years, right? Eradicating is a long-term approach. But you're absolutely correct, right? We really have to be aggressive and acknowledge what has happened to people in this city, what has happened to people in this country, and what continues to happen. We shouldn't be surprised by some of the things that we see in communities if you've purposely disinvested in these communities. So,
I tend to find that, and as we get our next person, just please raise your hand if you have a comment. I tend to find that people want, whether it be community-based, faith-based, community constituents, they want the effects to be focused on and ignore the cause. And, a lot of folks are kind of like, just stop the shooting, right? And I love that your approach is, no, it's not just about that violence piece. How do we look at making sure that we don't continue to disinvest or not invest in these communities that have been disinvested in all of these years? And we don't want to just deal with it from a reactive perspective. We want to deal with it from a proactive perspective. What is your plan? What are your thoughts on dealing with these youth of promise? Because I would imagine we got some short-term goals and some long-term goals.
Absolutely. So you are spot on. We not only have to think about the gun violence that we see, because that's a real issue. Rabbi Limmer and I have had this conversation many a times. That's a real issue, right? So how are we addressing the flow of guns into our communities? How are we making sure CPD, community violence intervention, and other levels of government have the resources needed to curtail some of that? And how are we how are we having conversations around why people feel the need to carry guns, right? What have we done in communities to create safety? This is a question that we've had this conversation before behind closed doors, but we'll have it here now for a second. Something that I would like all of you all to do is ask people in your congregations, ask people in your circles, when was the last time they felt happy and safe at the same time, right? Because typically, those are very hard to get in some communities, to have that intersection of being both happy and safe. So how do we create spaces where young folks feel welcomed, young folks feel safe? You don't have to worry. I mean, I started working when I was 13 years old, man, full time, 13 years old, right? So we have not given young folks the opportunities to be kids. Now, that's not to say that there are not young folks who need a different approach. And, oftentimes, when the mayor talks, people say, oh, and he says we're not going to demonize youth. That's absolutely correct. But people also conflate that to believe that he's also saying we're not holding folks accountable. And we are, right? You have to have accountability, but also you have to understand that it is our responsibility as a community throughout the city of Chicago to wrap our arms around these populations that have been ignored, that have been disserviced, that have been disinvested in. So, one, how do we create in partnership with young folks these safe spaces, right? How is it designed by young folks? How do we make sure it is not me and you creating these policies for young folks? Spend a lot of time with young folks around the city, have young folks come to a lot of our meetings to help us drive those policies, and we feel accountable to them, right? Because they know this city and they know their neighborhoods better than any of us ever will. They can tell you which block to go down, which block not to go down. They can tell you what their safe passage is. They can tell you everything that is happening block by block in their neighborhoods. So we can't just say, oh, we're going to start this program 3 blocks from them, and they may not be able to cross those 3 blocks. So we need to be very intentional. We had a budget hearing, budget town hall. We had 350 young folks come in and tell us about the different issues they wanted to see in the budget. And having those interactions and having these young folks help drive our policies is one way I think we really start to see the shift, and we'll see the difference because there's a different level of accountability and partnership there.
Good morning again. Good morning. My question is this. I'm originally from New York. Don't hold it against me. Been here 11 years. Been working in the community with the Youth of Promise and Adult of Promise. I'm going to try to get that language down. Yeah. And my family and I, we lived in the community for these past 11 years as well. And one thing that it taught me is what the community is actually going through. After I leave here, I have a funeral for a 30-year-old girl who died of a stomach infection that traveled to her brain. Most of her family struggle with mental health. The church and I and a couple of our leaders in the community are working on a project to bring the first maternity house to the south side in the Inglewood community to give young mothers and fathers opportunities that they don't have. And the question I have for you is, like, because I'm not from Chicago, and one thing that I love about Chicago that New York doesn't have is community. Like, I've been here, and when you grew up in Chicago, it's like you know everybody. Like, you guys know, like those of you who know each other, but as an outsider, sometimes I'm like, how do we bring our ideas to the table? Right, I heard you say that the 5th floor is open, but you guys, you gotta be overwhelmed with the amount of information that you're receiving from partners. So how does someone who has like a program that's been working, we started a preschool to help mothers and fathers go back to work or school. And we have cut the red tape and say, listen, we're gonna give you about 6 weeks and we will take care of your children. Our preschool, our 4-year-olds are reading before they leave. And we're saying we're giving you an opportunity to go to school because what we recognize, those kids won't go on the streets if they have models to watch. So if mom is going to work, dad is going to work, the natural thing is that the children are going to go to work or go to school. So we started our preschool about 9 years ago. And last year I went on a sabbatical for a month and realized how tired I was because I was doing things on my own. And I said in 2023, I want to develop a greater collaboration, but I don't want to just go to a meeting and keep talking and not seeing change happen. So how do I get past, all the red tape and get to the person who's going to hear the idea and then also implement what we're talking about?
I think you walked right past the red tape when you came in the store, brother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Like, yes, we receive a lot of requests, but when we say the 5th floor is open, we mean that. We've been in this position 2.5 months and have already created 9 separate working groups, right? And when I say working groups, I genuinely mean we're going to set the container, we're going to map out the implementation structure, and we'll see what the resources are needed there and how we do this in partnership. How do we find out what else is happening in Inglewood? How do we connect you with the relationships you'll need down there? The new superintendent is the son of Inglewood, Larry Snellen, so really making sure you have some of the relationships you need down there with the work that you're doing. How do we also connect you with different city agencies who can support some of the work? I think one thing that we have to do genuinely is really tell the story of what resources we have as a city. All right, there are things that I'm learning different in the city every day around the resources we have, the access we have. How do we create more pathways for smaller organizations to start coming into this work? How do we create more pathways where they have technical assistance? How do we stop the gatekeeping and open doors? Because the problems that we face, we got to tackle them together. So getting out the fifth floor is really open. Like this is not hyperbole. I told you it's like 300 people a week come through our doors on my side of the building, right? Just to hear the issues that we're tackling. This is what we're wrestling with. How can we address these? So this is why we've built a superb team. Manny knows the city better than anybody I've ever met in my life. I don't even know if the brother owns a GPS. He knows where to be and how to get there. So having people like Manny by my side, having people like Natashi by my side, bringing in folks like Lydia to be by my side so we can do this together, and also understanding how we work together with when I say every single agency, like I have DCASE in here thinking about the role that they can play in creating safety. So meaning, we're going to stop having all of our events downtown. Let's bring some of our events in the community. That's right. So really thinking about having everybody think about what their role is. And it's a lot, right? Because we got a lot to tackle. So really setting a container on what we tackle in this first set, what we tackle next year, and beyond. And making sure we do that in partnership with community-based organizations, with businesses, with faith leaders, with philanthropy, with the research tables, making sure we bring all these players together, because again, I'm under no illusion that we'll be able to do this alone.
I'll also say, as we go to our next question, one of the things, Pastor, that I am excited about is, every single administration, I've had the privilege to sit at those tables, and one of my frustrations have been, don't just call the faith leaders when you need to say you had a meeting with faith leaders, right? And all of y'all that have been to those meetings in this room, raise your hand, right? And it's disrespectful. And it's usually a meeting where that leader is kind of throwing out the stats. Here's what we've done. We've done this, we've done that. But yet we're not feeling that in our local communities or around our churches. And so one of the things I said to the mayor, and I also said to the deputy mayor and two of the others, I said, listen, you all can't wait till there's a tragedy or there's trauma, and then now you want to bring us on the camera, because we're not coming. And I said to Deputy Mayor, you need to talk to the faith leaders. He's like, set the date. And they walked me out to his scheduler and set the date. He was so serious about, that's why we have things like this. And my encouragement to everybody, make your own relationships with these leaders, because don't depend on the other leaders to bring you to the table when they get an opportunity to meet with the leaders. Typically, faith leaders, y'all know that in this room, typically they invite you to the meeting after the meeting, just so you can stand up there at the press conference and you don't even know what you're standing there for. And so that's why these kinds of conversations are really, really important. And the deputy mayor also understands that's the game that's played. So here's the good news, and something that we ought to clap for. He's looking for new voices. That's what we ought to be excited about. Next question.
Hello, yes, just to kind of keep on that same track. I'm blessed to do a lot of the behind the scenes work. That's what I love to do. Working with different churches on projects. And one of the things that I've seen in a lot of times in a lot of different situations is that they're like, well, I think you were right, Pastor. There's a lot that we as people of faith can do to help bring each other in and collaborate with each other. That there's a lot of discomfort with city officials, county officials, state officials on working with faith leaders or faith-based organizations. Some of which is kind of behind the scenes and kind of just comes through the language, and some of it has been very overt. I write a lot of grants, and I spend a lot of time in meeting with lower level bureaucrats. And my question for you is, like, what commitment can you make to keeping faith leaders at the table and continuing to work with faith-based organizations? And what is the city looking to do? And I hope that they're looking to do something to try to change that particular culture within the big body of government that we have here in Chicago, so that a lot of your boots on the ground, which are, especially in the South and West Sides, churches, as you well know, are able to do their work and get access to resources that everybody else in the city enjoys access to.
I don't know if you got the memo. We got a Kojic mayor. So, I think we've, won.
There's a lot of Baptist preachers in here. I just want to tell you that.
I grew up in a missionary Baptist church, right? So, listen. I think I don't think we'll have an issue working together, brother. I think having continuous conversations like this and having folks at the table to help us push work forward. I'm here, right? I didn't just come here for the watermelon and cantaloupe back there. I got that at my house. I came here to really listen to folks, have conversations, to think about how we can move our work forward together in collaboration, right? And understanding that when I say together in collaboration, I mean, I'm going to work and I need y'all to work and we need to work together because we're not getting out of this alone. And I know you all have been cranking out the work for a very long time. So let's be partners in it. And let's push this work forward because we don't have a choice. We cannot do this alone, right? That would be silly to try, right? And I know y'all are tired, right, of trying to do things alone and your voice is not being heard. So let's work together.
And I know that capacity is an issue. This is number 3, Phil. I know capacity is an issue. But what does that really mean for folks like us, right? We wanna do the work. Does that mean quarterly meetings? Does that mean bi-monthly meetings? Does that mean working sessions? Because just like you all are busy doing your work, many of us are busy doing our work. We got funerals to go to, weddings, and now many of us I'm really, really grateful to see more faith leaders coming outside the 4 walls of their churches, mosques, synagogues, and houses of worship to be involved in this problem. So to be a part of the solution. What does that actually mean? Do you have any ideas around that? And how much time will be required of us to be able to help you in that level of partnership?
It's hard to tell on the time, honestly, right? Because I think, remember, we are tackling root causes on one side and the issues that we see in the city on another side. So it's hard to tell what that time frame is, what that time commitment is, but you have our commitment to work together. Right, and there'll be times that issues come up that we'll have to spring in, and there'll be times that we really have to think long term how we tackle and how we address this. Mallory's not here, so I dare not try to manage my schedule without her.
Better not do that.
You know what I mean? But really, we can continue to have follow-up discussions, and then we can also spend some time in each of your areas to learn about the work you're doing, because we're outside, right? We're outside, and we have to be outside to hear and understand, here's the work you're doing, this is how we can address it, what are the needs, because there's needs on both sides, right? So really happy to work together as much as we possibly can, because there's so much work to do. Look, let me tell you something. They didn't tell you how much work it was to do before you took the job. There's so much work to do, and we want to do it together, and I've said that from day one. People say, you took it, like you said earlier, you took a big job, you took a hard job. No, we took a big job. We took a hard job. And Seth has heard me say this time and time again, and I will literally say it every time I talk to people. Every time somebody says, you took a big job, I say, yeah, we took a big job because safety is the job for all of us.
Next question. Right here, Pastor.
There it is. Thank you, Pastor Harris, for bringing us together, and certainly thank you, Deputy Mayor, for coming alongside these faith community leaders. A lot of us share your vision and your passion for effective change throughout our communities. Again, Keith McGee, Messiah Temple. There are others who are part of our state convention, as we call it, for our denominational work. Our president, Dr. Walker, is here, and some of the other pastors of United Baptist State Convention of Illinois. One of the things I like about Pastor Harris is he and I share the penchant for saying things out loud that a lot of people are feeling or thinking. What we have going on in our city, in our nation, quite frankly, it's something systemic that's happening. There's a ring, there's a network at large that's propelling our young people to do some of the things that they are doing. And hopefully that's some of the conversations that you guys are having in the city and with the officials in the police department. What I've discovered, and as we've had dialogue, many other pastors and I, not just here in Chicago, but across the country, is that it's not so much a city problem. We can't cast blame to city officials, to law enforcement officials and things like that so much. What we're honestly having is a home problem. A lot of times the church gets blamed. I've sat in meetings and we've been verbally accosted by, community stakeholders and residents saying, if the churches, all of these churches and all these houses of worship, you all have all these money and all these resources, why aren't you doing more to help the community? Well, we can do what we can do. We can only put a small dent in the problem, as many of you well know. I believe the people that are here today have vested interest in their communities, in their areas and things like that, and have done some significant things. Let's be honest, okay? Yeah, we've got a problem on one hand, but we've got some strides, some advances on the other hand. Many of us, we promote scholarships. We work with youth and mentoring and different things like that. We have a set of parents who bring those who are precocious. We mentor those who make themselves available to different programs that are available. Like one of the organizations I support, we just had over the summer an anti-violence violence prevention program, which was very successful. And we can go around the room naming all the stuff that we do. But how are we combating? How far are we looking into this home problem from perhaps those who have been detained and the parents that you've had to interact or interface with? What can we do to get to the root causes of the problem? Because again, it's been stated that we've been to a number of different meetings. I particularly from the state's attorney. Then it was the judicial committee at one time. Then it was at other times the top cop of Chicago saying what was going on and different things like that. And these meetings, after the meetings the conversation seems to have died on the vine. So what is the low-hanging fruit that you guys are working on as far as what's going on systemically? Because phones are chiming and mobs of young people are descending upon place A, place B, not just in Chicago. We learned about some stuff that's going on in LA. There's some things going on in the South, Alabama and Mississippi and things like that. It's going on everywhere. What are we doing to look into some of these root causes? And then as we leave this place today, I will reiterate, one of the statements or the sentiments that have been made. How are we going to keep this going? Who in this room is going to be appointed to some board or commission where weekly, monthly, quarterly conversation is going to continue, and we have some results-based decisions that are going to be made?
All right, so we've talked to young folks around why you see teen gatherings. And I'll tell you, phones chime and we see what the media covers. But I can tell you this summer alone, that young man has helped stop around 50 of those gatherings. Him, along with CPD, along with the Community Safety Coordination Center, along with our office. Him, right? But you won't see that coverage in the media. And I say 50 because we literally put together plans every weekend, because almost every day we hear about where there will be a teen gathering. And also understanding, talking to young folks, asking, all right, so what are y'all doing? We want to get out of our neighborhoods. We want to go downtown or escape things just like you all. the other piece of that is also you do have some young folks out there who get out of line, right? And CPD is doing their job. And not only is CPD out there, we also have community violence interrupters out there. We've worked in partnership with the state to expand resources to cover areas where you see these large trends and these large gatherings. And the state just went back and doubled up resources to expand it even more. So we are covering a lot of these spaces, and there's a plan in place consistently. And what I think a lot of folks would be surprised by is, Glenn Brooks, who I'm sure all of you all know, I'm sure Glenn has literally been in almost all of y'all living rooms before, because Glenn is everywhere. But, Glenn will go above and beyond and take some of these kids home. And he told me he pulled up to a house and he's like, what? So there's this belief that every child who is acting out has issues at home, and that's just simply not the case. So we can't take this cookie cutter approach. We can't make, and I'm not saying you said this, but I've heard this so many times, we can't make blanket statements. We need to, these kids are fatherless kids or whatever. I can't tell you the number of times people have said that to me, what are you doing about the fathers? I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean, what am I doing about the fathers in their home? But genuinely understanding and having real conversations with the young folks, understanding why they are there and having them help us create spaces where they feel welcomed. Folks have told young folks they're not welcome in places. And think about when we were younger, not that we're not young in here, so let's just be clear on that. Think about a few decades ago when we were told we couldn't go places. That'd be the first place we'd go. Because if you can tell me I can't be somewhere, you best believe that's where I'm gonna show up. And that's just the game. We have to genuinely engage our young folks more. And we have to listen to their leadership more. We can't think that the solutions that worked for us will automatically work for them, because we need to talk to them and we need to be intentional about that. So, yeah.
We got about 10 more minutes, folks. So I love the fact that this is your time, so please use it.
Morning. Hey. First of all, you seem like you know a little bit. But I'm serious. But you can't play today's ball's game on yesterday's score. A lot of folks talk about a lot of things, what they're doing, what they ain't doing. What you have done mean nothing. What is to follow up and follow through? Before you go organize anything, you have to organize us, the adults, the leaders. Some of us have become stagnated, and some of us is giving people what they want us to have instead of what we need. You have to meet people where they are at. Mm-hmm. A lot of them haven't found that out yet. We do a whole lot of things, but it makes us feel good as individuals. What about the person we serving? My office, I don't have a lot of chiefs and leaders. It's me, this lady, and 3 more people. We have dealt with everything on this earth from birth to death. Criminal, pedophiles, juveniles, landlords, police, housing, evictions, getting people to pay their rent. We deal with everything. Some of us, I get the strategies. We sit around the table and decide what we're going to do. I got to get the strategies. Now you sit around and get your table. Everybody decide we're going to do this, and they never get past the table because nobody signed their name off on it. Well, why you didn't do this? Well, I thought we said, but I thought you was going to do it, so nobody gets to do it. We need to change our mindset. Some of us are stagnated. I ain't going to say stuck on soup, but we just haven't grown any. We continue to do the same thing over and over and over like that and have to run that wheel. We had a peace march. Okay, what about it? What was the follow-up? It's this peace march. I got all them youth. Okay, all y'all that's really interested in this march, here's my card. Next week on this date, this time, we're going to meet and we're going to come up with a strategy. Whoever follows up and follows through, there's no follow-up, there's no follow-through. And that's what we need to pay attention to. We got to stop doing things the way we've been doing. We got a lot of churches, you have a lot of meetings, but guess what? How many doors are only open? We got a lot of churches I go past every Sunday. As a matter of fact, anybody name your area, the street the church located on, I can tell you what's on your block. If you don't know if you got a church, if you don't know what's north, east, or south of it within a mile, then you're taking up space to me. You got to know your community. On Sundays, we have car double park and triple car park. So what the people in the community usually would walk to work. walk to church. You're not serving your community. You can't have we got a convoy at our church today, big deal. I got my own carnival. You got to do something that's significant to that community. You got to embrace your community. We're not doing that. How many really young kids? If I'm not a grandmother, great-grandmother, been to church for 20, 30 years, ain't no more young kids in church. And pretty soon we're going to all die out and get too old to come to church. We have to change the way we do business. Religion, one thing about, I'm asking everybody a question. Every year, how many, and just think about it, everybody walks the streets every day and see congregation. How many pregnant people have you seen this year? Usually every day you count 9 or 10 young women pregnant, can't you? Have you seen that many this year? There's very few young people that's pregnant. Have y'all paid that any attention? How many stomachs have you seen this year, Pastor Harris?
Well, since we serve thousands, quite a few, but I get your point. I think, Francine, let me say this. I think you're right. And what I'll say is, when it comes to the houses of worship, right, that is 100% correct, right? We absolutely need to open the doors. We absolutely need to provide more opportunities and resources and programs. We need to include those adults that are in there. One of the good things about this particular room is you have folks in the room that actually do that. I guess our question and our work is, and the opportunity that exists, is how do we get more houses of worship that are around the ones that are already doing the work that Francine is talking about to get involved? And what ways, Deputy Mayor, can we partner with the city to engage those? Because what I will also say on the flip side of that is the community doesn't have a right to ask the churches to do things, and the church, without realizing, the churches don't have the resources that it always has. And let me just say this, any church that you find double parking after COVID is an anomaly. It is amazing how many people are not coming back to the churches now, but some of that is our fault. Some of that is our opportunity. How can we, in the spirit of what Francine is saying, how can the houses of worship in an effective way partner with the city, your vision, to have those follow-up meetings? Because that's definitely, you just literally repeated what Pastor said. What's the follow-up? Who's next? Will there be a faith community liaison connected to your office to engage this kind of group on a continual basis?
Yeah, so a couple of things.
Thanks, Francine.
Thank you, Francine. There will be, in the mayor's office, a faith liaison. Secondarily, when we talk about follow-up, a part of some of the long-term work that we're doing is we need to build out implementation committees, right? One thing that I've learned pretty quickly is people love a press conference. People love to pass an ordinance, or people love to pass a bill in Springfield and have a press conference. You go to implementation rooms, and you're in there alone, Jack, and there is a lot of work where your policies are actually framed in implementation rooms. So understanding who's responsible for what, so creating accountability mechanisms. This is what you said you could do. These are the folks you said you could help. How is that going? How do we check in on that? So this accountability stream is a two-way street. How do we work together and really build out models for long-term success? Understanding the work that you all have done that has been successful, understanding where the gaps are and how those gaps can be filled, and genuinely understanding what commitments we can make and how we can move forward. So there's a lot to tackle, but I am genuinely optimistic that we can tackle it together.
I got time for one more question.
Can I just finish this passage?
Make it really, really fast.
Really short. Community residents always look for what you can do for them. It's just a place to go, to knowing they have peace, knowing somebody to talk to them, knowing somebody's meeting where they at and not where they want them to be.
That's right.
It doesn't matter. Open your door, let me in. Let me see what you're doing. Maybe I might like it and join. Bring my other friends in.
That's right.
I'm talking about old school.
That's right.
And we got to get back to basics, and you got to deal with us before you can deal with the rest of the community. We ain't got our head on straight. What you do with us don't mean nothing. It's going to stay with us. You got to deal with us, the individuals first, see where we coming from, see where the religious folks coming from. If you don't, it ain't going to work. It ain't been working. We got to change the way we do things, and now it's the time. You want to make a difference? Start with us. See where we come from, see what it is that we doing. We say, I do this for my church, I do this. What about your community and what you sit, your base? They ain't doing nothing for the community. They ain't gonna do nothing work with you either.
And Francine, let me ask you a question. How many CHA residents do we have in Chicago?
Well, we got 70,000 Section 8 units, I just multiplied by 3. It might be 6, 7, 8, and 9 in there. And 20,000 public housing, I multiplied it by 5. So I deal with average like maybe 200,000 people. We get like 400-500 phone calls a day. We put out fire. Somebody say something going on. Sound too good to be true. I'm not sitting there on the phone. Or I'm coming over there. Everything going, I go and see for myself. That's how I know the city. I don't wait. And I do whatever's necessary to get the person where they need to be.
Now get that mic, because Francine a fake preacher and she'll preach longer than us. But let me say this. The reason I had her to do that is because those of y'all that do programming and serve communities, I guarantee you that if you are not in the community is not going to come to you. And connecting with someone like Francine, I've done this. Connecting with someone like Francine and her team, she can literally drive the residents to your work. So, for example, right outside Bright Star, this housing facility right here, when I need something or have something for the residents and the community, one of the first calls that we make is to Francine's team to say, hey, we're serving in your community. We want people to be served and utilize what we have. So please don't let this resource walk out with you all connecting with Francine and her team. Last question right here, and we'll be done. Is that Michael? Turn it on. There we go.
Thank you. I'm Father Michael Trail from St. Thomas the Apostle Catholic Church in Hyde Park. From my vantage point, I see two things happening. I see and I appreciate the work that you're doing in addressing our long-term residents, our long-term issues, and looking at it from a new, different perspective. One of the things, though, that I also see from my vantage point is Chicago is welcoming a new community of migrants and refugees to our community. So, how is your office bringing those two things together, dealing with our long-standing issues that have plagued Chicago for a long time, but also finding ways to welcome our new incoming residents who ultimately will be long-term residents here in the city of Chicago? Thanks.
Yeah. So I get to work hand in hand with Beatrice Ponce de Leon, who is leading our efforts on that. But that is also an all-hands-on-deck effort. Almost every city agency, we're on the call at 8:30 every morning. We have over 13,000 folks who've come in the city. We got 1,300 folks in police stations. So this is not something that one agency can work on. We're also working with a ton of community-based organizations, faith organizations. And this is something that we genuinely we've never seen anything like this before, right? So how do we approach this? How do we continue to be a welcoming city? How do we also make sure we get resources to our new neighbors and get resources to folks who've been in this city their whole lives? It's not an or. This has to be an and we continue to provide resources for communities. But this is a biggie, all right? And we work hand in hand, day to day on one, how are we approaching this population? How do we make sure communities feel safe? How do we make sure our new neighbors feel welcomed? It's a lot, right? This is something that we evolve and we grow into every single day. And we will continue to lean on our partners, both inside and outside of government, to continue to work towards long-term solutions. We've got folks working on that, but we also have folks working on what we're seeing on a daily basis. And that's in all our work there, right? I mean, I know I talked a lot about our long-term work, but rest assured, we are dealing with the things that we see in communities on a daily basis in my office as well. So this is why we took that bifurcated approach. But we work directly with Beatrice and DFSS and OEMC and CPD and CFD and parks, you name it, community-based organizations, city-run shelters, volunteer-run shelters. We are a faith community, philanthropy. We're in it together, man. Schools, city colleges. Like, we are literally trying to tackle this because, again, like, we get multiple buses a day. And I'm not sure if the media covers that, but sometimes we get 3 buses in a day. And that's on us to figure out, right? And this is what we're doing on a daily basis, right? So it's also fascinating what you notice when you work for the city as opposed to when I didn't work for the city. You see things, you see a lot of different things now. You pay attention to a lot of different things now. So we're tackling it, man. There's not an easy answer to that. There's not a one-size-fits-all solution because we're dealing with things that we have never seen before. Also, while we're here and before we wrap up, we're going to be dealing with record heat this week. So really thinking about how we open up doors to community partners tomorrow and Thursday and potentially Friday. All right, we're working on plans. We've got plans for schools. OEMC has plans for the city. But we really have to open our doors and wrap our arms around folks if that's something you're already doing. This is not a request coming directly from the city. Let me be clear. This is something for you all to think about for community partners who may be suffering in heat over the next few days, because we are going to see record heat, and we have to be prepared for that.
Well, let me just say this. First of all, can we clap our hands for our deputy mayor coming to take time with us today? Can you also keep on clapping for each other? Faith leaders are very, very busy. And so this is clearly an ecumenical group, and I'm so grateful for all of you all taking the time to come with us today. My strongest encouragement to you, how many of y'all have been to many meetings about solving problems like this, violence prevention or community safety? Raise your hand. The question is, did you solve the problem in that meeting? Well, you weren't going to solve it in this one either. So I pray that you will leave out here understanding that the reason that we can say this was a successful meeting is because it did exactly what we wanted it to do. Start a conversation with this new office of community safety. And again, I want to thank our friend and brother, Deputy Mayor Gatewood, for coming to hang with us. Make sure you meet him on your own. Have a great day, everybody.